You already know something is wrong. You have felt it for years. You work harder than anyone around you. You stay loyal when others cut and run. You listen when no one listens back. And what do you have to show for it? You are tired in a way sleep does not fix. You are kind to people who use your kindness as a map to your weaknesses. You smile in rooms where people are already planning how to extract the next thing from you. You were told that being good, being available, and being endlessly cooperative was the path to respect and safety. You were lied to. That advice was not wisdom. It was a leash. It was a playbook written by the takers for the takers to ensure that the outliers, the ones who think differently, stay manageable, soft, and infinitely exploitable. Today, we strip away the polite lies of society and expose the brutal machinery of human nature. I am not going to comfort you today. I am going to do something far more dangerous. I am going to show you the cold, calculated architecture of power that the predators in your life already know. The knowledge I am about to share with you is completely irreversible. Once you see this framework, you cannot unsee it. The void it opens in your mind is permanent. This is the line. Cross it, and nothing goes back to the way it was. Point 1. The empathy matrix and the illusion of connection. The foundational error that makes the average person permanently exploitable is the belief that empathy is a single, unified switch in the brain. You have sat across from someone who said all the right things, who reflected your words back with such precision that you felt genuinely seen, yet you walked away feeling hollow and drained. You assumed they cared because they understood you. This is the most dangerous misread in human psychology. Empathy is not a binary trait. It is a highly complex, layered neurological event that operates across 3 distinct layers: cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, and compassionate empathy. To understand how you are being hunted, you must understand the weather report analogy. Cognitive empathy is the ability to understand how someone else feels on a purely intellectual level. It is like reading a detailed meteorological report that says it is raining outside. You have all the data, you know the precipitation levels, but you are sitting perfectly safe in a dry room. Emotional empathy, however, is somatic resonance. It relies heavily on the brain's mirror neuron system and the anterior insula. Emotional empathy is stepping out of the house, standing in the storm with the other person, and physically feeling the icy water on your own skin. You shiver because they are shivering. Finally, compassionate empathy is the deep, intrinsic drive to step in and help. It is the overwhelming urge to run out into the storm, hand them an umbrella, and pull them to safety. The massive, chilling psychological realization you must internalize right now is this: manipulators, particularly those with dark triad traits like narcissists, Machiavellians, and psychopaths, often possess a remarkably high degree of cognitive empathy. They can read the weather report perfectly. They have the topographical map of your mind. They know exactly what makes you tick, what tone of voice makes you feel small, and what grand gestures make you feel loved. But their emotional and compassionate empathy layers are entirely barren. They do not feel a single drop of the rain, and they have absolutely zero internal motivation to hand you an umbrella. Instead, they use the map to set traps. They use their cognitive empathy not for connection, but for reconnaissance. They catalog your pain and deploy it against you at the exact moment you are least prepared to defend yourself. You are bringing a bouquet of flowers to a knife fight. You must stop mistaking accurate data collection for genuine human warmth. Point 2. The flaw of emotional mirroring and the parasite economy. The average human is biologically wired to seek connection and harmony. When you see someone in pain or distress, your mirror neurons fire automatically, forcing your nervous system to synchronize with their emotional state. Society loves to tell us that being highly social and emotionally available is the absolute pinnacle of psychological health. The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer understood that this is a dangerous lie. The reality is that your biology is violently dragging your mind down to the lowest common denominator. When you enter a group, a psychological leveling automatically occurs. Your empathy forces you to connect, and you end up absorbing the anxieties of the herd, caring about their trivial dramas, and adopting their manufactured controversies. This is a fatal glitch in your neurochemistry. The herd believes that giving away this emotional energy is a noble act of compassion, but in reality, it is a massive cognitive tax extracted by social parasites who feed on your vitality. Toxic individuals do not view interactions as an exchange of mutual value or genuine connection. They view every conversation as the extraction of resources. Your attention, your emotional reaction, and your self-esteem are the exact resources they drain to fill their own fundamental insignificance. Every time you enter a social dynamic, you have to read the room, anticipate the emotional needs of everyone around you, and filter your authentic thoughts to maintain a fabricated, accommodating persona. This single act of suppression requires massive mental energy. You are actively fighting your own nervous system to remain socially acceptable, and your body feels destroyed after a gathering because your intellect is depleted from the heavy lifting. The Parasite class has learned to trigger your oxytocin response deliberately, creating small moments of manufactured warmth to keep you functioning as a resource node. You give, you justify, you excuse, and you return. You must understand that stupidity and mediocrity are highly contagious. If you bring a complex, nuanced thought into a crowded room, the collective will reject it because it requires too much energy for them to process. By keeping your empathy unchecked, you are committing slow intellectual suicide, overheating your own mental engine just to remain palatable to a crowd that does not even respect you. You must weaponize distance and become a ruthless curator of your own environment. Point 3. The dopamine leash and the addiction of intermittent reinforcement. The average person interprets hot and cold behavior in a relationship as emotional immaturity, a flaw that patience might eventually correct. You bend over backward to be liked, you are always available, and you sacrifice your own comfort to ensure others are accommodated, believing this deposits goodwill into a psychological bank account. You are entirely wrong. This interpretation is not naivety. It is the product of a neurochemical trap engineered with the same precision as a casino slot machine. In the 1950s, psychologist B.F. Skinner discovered that rats receiving unpredictable food rewards became compulsive in ways that consistent rewards never produced. The variable reward schedule created an obsessive behavioral loop. The unpredictability itself became the drug, and the lever became the only thing that mattered. Sophisticated manipulators do not need to read Skinner to understand this. They discovered this mechanism through practice. They shower you with kinetic attention, making you feel like the axis around which their world rotates, and then they go cold without explanation. No fight, no reason, just a freezing void. By alternating between extreme, suffocating affection and sudden, unexplainable coldness, a manipulator hacks your dopamine loop and creates a permanent neurochemical addiction. Your brain, which had calibrated to receiving that warm signal, enters a state of withdrawal. You begin scanning for what you did wrong. You begin performing, trying to predict the unpredictable, altering your behavior and lowering your boundaries just to get another hit of the jackpot you received yesterday. And the moment you reach, they return, just enough to reset the loop and confirm to your nervous system that the lever still works if you press it hard enough. You forget your own worth because you are too busy chasing the high of their temporary approval. You are not attached to the person. You are attached to the unresolved loop they deliberately left open. The sovereign response is the flatline protocol. You train your nervous system to produce the exact same internal state regardless of whether they are warm or cold. You do not chase the high, and you do not panic at the silence. You bypass their logical defenses entirely and assume total command of your own nervous system by recognizing that the leash only functions if you feel it. Cease to feel it, and you are no longer leashable. Point 4. Weaponized silence and the trap of strategic vulnerability. Modern society relentlessly encourages you to broadcast your life. You are conditioned to believe that sharing your daily struggles, your deeply held fears, and your unvarnished truth is a sign of authenticity and healing. The herd is terrified of silence, interpreting prolonged quiet from another person as potential rejection, and responding by attempting to repair the perceived rupture through speech and over-disclosure. People will confess things they never intended to say, just to end an uncomfortable pause. To a dark empath or a Machiavellian manipulator, your supposed authenticity is nothing more than a detailed, high-resolution map of your vulnerabilities. Every piece of yourself you disclose to the wrong person is not bonding. It is handing them live ammunition. Cesare Borgia, the ruthless conqueror studied by Machiavelli, understood this architecture perfectly. In 1502 at Sinigaglia, Borgia invited his most dangerous rivals to a peace summit. He utilized cognitive empathy as a weapon, creating conditions of apparent safety and mutual understanding. He made his enemies feel that their perspectives were heard and honored. They shared. They disclosed. They relaxed their perimeters. Then, Borgia had them seized and executed. The information they had surrendered in the spirit of diplomacy became the precise map of their own destruction. Information asymmetry is the most elegant power structure available to an outlier. The person who speaks less knows more by the end of any encounter, while the person who fills every silence has surrendered their position without being asked to. The solution is the tiered disclosure system, operating on a strict rule of controlled disclosure. You must treat your emotional disclosures as kinetic assets that, once released, can be redirected against you. You build separate chambers, a vault and a lobby. The lobby is warm, reasonably open, and carefully curated, while the vault is where your real data, your origin wounds, and your deep fears live. Only people who have demonstrated sustained loyalty over time under extreme pressure earn access to the vault. For everyone else, you deploy weaponized stillness. In any high-stakes interaction, allow silence to exist as a neutral field and observe. The one who breaks the silence first reveals their discomfort, handing you a map of their vulnerability without you ever having to ask a single question. Point 5. Starving the vampire and the architecture of total ruin. When you are trapped in a dynamic with a manipulator, your biological instinct is to fight back, to argue, to demand a sincere apology, and to strike back with equal force to prove you are not weak. Your fragile ego demands blood and justice. But proving you are right to a manipulator is like shouting at a storm. Manipulative people feed on emotional reactions. Whether it is positive or negative, it is all supplied to them. They are vampires actively hunting for an emotional meal. To defeat them, you do not use proportional retaliation. You use the gray rock method, a clinical masterclass in understanding and manipulating the mechanics of emotional supply. The tactical execution of the gray rock method is entirely about chemical and emotional starvation. You make your verbal and nonverbal responses as utterly dull, brief, and profoundly uninteresting as a literal gray rock sitting on the side of the road. You strip your face of all micro-expressions. You maintain a completely neutral blank effect. You ensure your vocal tone remains incredibly flat, lacking any inflection of anger or sadness. You are giving them a completely smooth, frictionless surface with no handholds, no ledges, and no cracks. You are hiding every single vulnerability, so they have absolutely nothing to grab onto. When you embody the gray rock, the cognitive map they are trying to use against you becomes useless. They pull the lever that usually makes you cry, and nothing happens. Because their engagement with you is purely transactional, they will eventually calculate that the massive effort they are exerting is no longer yielding a return on investment. The slot machine is broken. They will become intensely bored and will be forced to look elsewhere to feed their addiction. But when a toxic element must be permanently removed from your life, you escalate from gray rock to the architecture of total ruin. Machiavelli taught that injuries should be so severe that vengeance need not be feared. When you deal with a parasite, you do not use half measures, you do not negotiate for peace, and you do not seek closure. You dismantle their leverage completely. You revoke their access with sudden, absolute finality. You do not just win the argument, you completely erase the battlefield, leaving them stunned and lacking the footing to ever strike back. Point 6. The sovereign exit and the price of power. I must tell you something now that most of what passes for self-help completely refuses to say. The architecture you have just learned is not free. There is a staggering toll, and it is significant. Applying these dark laws will not bring you popularity or the warm embrace of society. It will systematically alienate you from the herd. When you begin operating from these principles, the people who were extracting from you will notice first, because the supply has changed. They will not say you have stopped being exploitable. They will say you have changed, you are different, you are cold and distant. They will accuse you of abandonment, pivoting immediately from ignoring you to weaponizing their grievance about being ignored. The narrative inverts, and you become the villain in a story they are already writing about you. You will lose friends who only liked you when you were weak, compliant, and easily digestible. You will sever ties with toxic family members who relied heavily on your submission to feel powerful in their own miserable lives. Let them whisper. Sheep always whisper about the wolf. The apex of true power is an absolute, freezing isolation. The void that opens when you amputate the parasitic architecture of your old social life is not a punishment. It is your impenetrable fortress. Most people avoid this void because they are afraid of the silence, filling every moment with noise and distraction. But Carl Jung described individuation as a process that requires separation from the collective. The fortress is not built from warm company. It is built from the interior work that most people will never begin. When you no longer need the emotional warmth of the crowd to survive, the crowd permanently loses all its leverage over you. You trade the cheap illusion of companionship for total, unyielding sovereignty over your own mind. The view from the summit is impeccably clear, but it is freezing. The open loop that cannot be closed tonight. You came here to understand power. You have successfully learned how to freeze out the parasites, silence the manipulators, and build your fortress of isolation. You are no longer a fragile leaf blowing helplessly in the wind of other people's chaotic emotions. You have become the wind itself. You can walk into a room, see the invisible strings pulling everyone else, and smile because you know you are no longer playing their pathetic game. But this newfound sovereignty instantly introduces a far darker, infinitely more complex consequence that you are completely unprepared for. Because once you wear the crown, everyone lingering in the shadows wants to take it. You have pulled up the drawbridge to your castle, but when you stop being a target for the low-level predators, you attract a much more sophisticated threat. There is a category of individual who is not triggered by your withdrawal. They are drawn to it because they recognize the architecture. When two people who understand the full matrix occupy the same space, the game is no longer simple. How do you spot the traitor who is already inside your walls, drinking your wine and speaking your exact psychological language? How do you identify the adversary who respects your architecture enough to attempt to dismantle it from the inside? That is a question I will not answer in the time we have left tonight. That requires going somewhere most channels will not follow you, touching deeper layers of dark neurochemistry and reality distortion. We will go down that rabbit hole soon. The architecture is already being built. If you want to survive the predators that are coming for you next, subscribe and do not look away. Stay sovereign, stay cold, and watch carefully who is watching you.